hello, everyone. This is State Representative Kate Lipper-Garabedian. Thank you for joining me for our Conversations with Kate. I'm joined today by the Executive Director of Follow Your Art Community Studios, Kris Rodolico. Thanks for being here, Kris.
Oh my goodness, thanks so much for having me.
So, Kris, I'm excited to hear more about sort of your personal trajectory, all the work that you've done as an artist yourself, and then also leading such a community foundational organization now in the city, and the involvement of that over time. And it's a perfect time to talk to you because my community conversation to kick off the new year was around lifelong learning and pursuing sort of passion, setting goals for yourself for a holistic new year. I was joined on the panel discussion by the new executive director for the Mass Cultural Council. I know you do a lot of work with that statewide organization. And as somebody who is so inspired by art but maybe doesn't create it myself, I'm glad to have you in the community to think about ways I might expand my own opportunities and experiences over the coming year. So why don't we start out by learning a little bit more about you and about Follow Your Art, which as a community studio is working to build community by supporting creative endeavors of all ages and abilities with opportunities for learning, growth, discovery, and outreach through visual arts, writing, and performance. So let us know a little bit about how you came into this role, what's your background is professionally, and then for those who may not know, Follow Your Art initially was sort of a downtown business that was lovely, and then it evolved and expanded into this wonderful nonprofit institution.
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me, and apologies for the way I sound. So my background is as an art therapist. I went and got my master's in art therapy. I was a licensed mental health counselor for years. Most of the places I worked tended to have an art-centered approach to art therapy, which meant art was kind of a central part of the work, and your work with the client was also the art was another kind of presence in the room. So it was pretty centrally located in the arts. And after having my second child, it made more sense for me to do something a little bit closer to home and a little bit more flexible. So I started Follow Your Art at my dining room table.
Wow.
With 6 kids who I think are all now freshmen and sophomores in college. And they were 5 and 6 at the time.
Sure.
And slowly it grew from there to a very tiny classroom at the Green Street Baptist Church. I'm very grateful for the support that they gave us in the beginning. And then down to Main Street. And we grew very slowly. And what became clear to me through that process was that what I envisioned for Follow Your Art was not a business owned by an individual. It was a community endeavor.
Right.
And it was only going to be successful if it was given over to the community to really expand and create community input. I didn't want to own it. I wanted it to be owned by the community. I wanted it to take on ideas that I don't have. And that's the most exciting part about what we do now. For example, we have this thriving, growing creative writing program. Never would have happened in any other endeavor, but we are fortunate to have 2 wonderful writers and very hard workers on our board. And that kind of grew from there when we were starting to craft a mission and think about what we wanted to be. The question came up, well, what about writing? I was, absolutely, what about writing? Storytelling is the other thing that we're trying to kind of grow. And we're open to any and all creative ideas that come from the community.
That's lovely. And my mother, you may know, is an author. So
yes.
I really love the work that you've led on in that space. And I have a neighbor who's come down and just spent some time at the community studio working on her craft.
Yeah.
So it's really great to know that you've expanded based on sort of input from others, right? We're always learning from each other. So I know that Follow Your Art offers a vast number of opportunities over the course of a year. I get your emails, I see, information online. But would you like to share a little bit more for people who are listening and thinking about what they might like to do creatively this year, about the programming and how people can get engaged and involved?
Absolutely. Well, I think that the biggest piece that I think people think of when they think of Follow Your Art is the after-school programming for kids. And we do quite a bit of that. And we do vacation programs and summer programs. So we have visual art programs and creative writing programs, for kids and teens. We also have quite a few options for adults. And we tend to cater to adults who maybe have never done this before, have never painted before, are interested in trying to see what they can do creatively. We have monthly adult drop-ins.
Okay.
They tend to be the first Tuesday of the month. They are, you do not need to register. There's a small fee. You come in, Kiara, our lovely program manager, is there. She presents a project, but you can bring your own project. You can do something completely different with the materials that we have at hand. So there are other opportunities. And then the other thing we do and are trying to do more now that COVID restrictions are easing is to bring the community into the space. We have a gallery. We have an opening usually the first Friday of every month, and our gallery is really working hard to stay within the mission of the entire organization. So it's this month we have a member show, and the theme is hygge, or this idea of like what's cozy and what kind of feels good and what brings you joy. We have children in the show and we have adults in the show. We have folks who have masters in fine arts, and we have folks who are very new to art making. And that's really, I think, the niche that we want to kind of provide for the community, is that we are a place that is accessible to everybody. And if there's something that is a barrier, we want to know and we want to actively work to address it.
That's great. I also have seen that you're really focused as well on your Arts for All initiative. So this is maybe especially unique to you in terms of just being able to support engagement and participation to be inclusive. Can you talk a little bit about those goals and how you're working to achieve them?
Sure. I'd have to say that Arts for All is probably the thing that I'm most proud of in the first few years of our development. We've only been open since September 2019, and then the pandemic hit.
Sure.
But our Arts for All program is geared to make sure that as much as possible, we are accessible to those with financial constraints, to those with differing abilities. We really try to get into the community as much as possible. So one of the ways we do that is we have a very active scholarship program. Just this quarter, we've given away $3,200 in scholarships. We do not turn anybody away. We got involved with the EBT Card to Culture program, which is great because that means that we are easier to find for folks who use EBT cards.
That's great.
I would say about 90% of our scholarships are given away to EBT card holders who live in Melrose and surrounding communities. We also work with individual families so that if an individual needs some extra assistance in a class, we will do everything we can to meet with that family, to meet with that child, if it is child, and pull in the resources that we have to make that individual's experience in the studio as fulfilling as possible. We have limitations, but we're very creative and we're pretty good at kind of working through our limitations. And we really want to make clear to the community that as much as possible, our space is for everybody, and we want to welcome people into that space.
That's so lovely. I know that you've done some capital improvement projects, for example, to ensure that mobility impaired, people can access the building. I'm thinking also just yesterday I was on a call with the YMCA, and they were describing a program that they've stood up. Maybe it was in Lynn, for swimming for students who are visually impaired, right? So just thinking about different abilities and ensuring that arts are accessible to folks is so important.
Absolutely. And also, we had a new family to Melrose who called ahead and said their daughter, English was her second language, and they weren't 100% sure how things were going to go. And this is what I mean by we're very creative in finding ways to get around things. So we were very fortunate that we have a friend who spoke the language and was willing to come in for the first 2 sessions and make sure things were going to work out. It worked out great. But if we needed to hire an interpreter for that child, we would find a way to make that happen because, and that's where our donation dollars go.
Got it.
We did a chalk walk fundraiser back in the fall. It was a ton of fun. It was so successful. And we had donations anywhere from, $10 to $300, but every single one of those goes toward these programs. And that's the piece of Follow Your Art Community Studios that I hope people kind of understand. It is about after-school art programming. It is about gallery shows, but it's about more than that.
And, as a former teacher, I remember really finding some of the research done around exposure to art and culture in terms of student sort of engagement and outcomes to be incredibly powerful. So I remember there was a study that I read about where students who just attended a play, who went and saw a dramatic theater production, there was some causal impact on how they then were going back in the classroom with literacy, for example. You're hearing or seeing things through art and culture in a different way that just sort of creates connections, I think, in the brain and just enables folks to have, I think, a broader sense of, the curriculum, for example, in the classroom setting. So anything we can do to sort of support people getting in your door is really great for you. It's great for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say I don't want to exaggerate, but we've gotten a couple recently. So I would say probably once a session, we receive an email from a family, and it's somewhere along the lines of, my child was very anxious coming in. My child has a hard time in social situations. My child struggles sometimes to communicate effectively, and I want to thank you because they came out of their classes so proud and so happy with what they were doing. And that's the bigger piece of it. The
Right.
bigger piece of it, it's not just about making a painting. It is about making a painting. That's important, and that's a big piece of pride. But it's being in an environment where all of your ideas are heard and you get to control. We always tell kids and adults, in the end, you are the artist and the artist is in charge. So we can make suggestions, we can try to teach things, we can show different tools and techniques, but in the end, you're looking at your work and you are deciding, is this how I best express myself? And if the answer is yes, then the work is done.
That's great. Can you talk a little bit for folks who are listening about ways that they can be involved in supporting your impact, and then any upcoming events or initiatives that we might want to put on our calendars to consider attending or joining you at?
Absolutely. The best way for folks to get involved, honestly, is, check our Facebook page, check our website.
And what is your website?
Our website is fyamelrose.org.
Okay.
So follow your art, fyamelrose.org. And we have lots of opportunities for volunteering, whether it's coming in and greeting kids at the door, or we have quite a bit of construction still going on at the studio. We're building a new ceramic studio,
That's right.
which is very exciting. So there's always something that could be done for any kind of skill set. Donations are really helpful. Like I said, a lot of our donations from our 2020 year-end campaign came in $10 and $15 amounts. And through that, we raised $12,000, which kicked us off for our Arts for All program for the next year.
Great.
So that's always really helpful. Looking at our calendar for gallery shows, we have a gallery show that will be up for the month of March that I described earlier. So it's community members.
Yes.
It's folks who live in Melrose displaying their work. We have
My parents are coming up in a couple of weeks, so I'm going to send them over.
because the gallery is open.
That's great.
We have an author talk coming up on March 31st.
Okay.
Nima Avashia, she is our Foundation Trust Creative Writing Fellow. So Foundation Trust, through very generous grants, has given us funding for an artist in residence and a writer in residence each year. This year, our artist in residence is Steve Aldias. He's a Melrose resident. And Nima is launching a book of essays. I think it just came out on March 1st. So we're having a book party and conversation with her on March 31st. It should be really great. Her book is essays describing what it was like growing up a child of immigrants and queer in Appalachia.
Oh.
She's a very dynamic speaker. She's also a teacher, and I've loved every conversation I've had with her, so I'm really looking forward to that.
I might try to come. That's where my grandfather's farm was when we were growing up in
Really?
Southwest Virginia. Yes.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely come. She's delightful to talk to. I can't wait to read the book.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. Well, great. Anything else you'd want us to know before we close out for the day?
Sure. Look for us out and about in the community this spring.
Okay.
We are working with Melrose High School students in a couple of capacities right now. One is to create a portrait project that is a student-led group that I'm working with to identify inspiring individuals from traditionally marginalized groups to identify portraits. And we'll be creating portraits. Those will be in our gallery this summer, and they'll be out in the community this spring. We are partnering with Opening Doors, and there will be a pretty fantastic concert and art event on June 11th.
That's right. I saw that they received some local grant funding as well as some state grant funding.
Yes. And we are teaming up with them and with Artists for Humanity in Boston. So our high school students and students from Artists for Humanity, which is an organization that employs under-resourced teens in the arts, and they will be coming to meet with our students and collaborating on a community project that those two groups of students will then bring to Opening Doors for the rest of the community to participate in. So this has been something in the works for a while. I'm very excited to welcome Artists for Humanity to Melrose. It's an incredible organization. I suggest people look it up.
How lucky we are to have, those connections being made through your, grounding here in Melrose. And one thing that, the chalk walk that you mentioned also reminded me, it's wonderful because there's just so many benefits to the types of fundraisers that you're doing, because we all then just get to see such vibrant color and expression and creativity as we go about our daily lives. And it makes a difference just in, everyday life to be able to be exposed and have that level of connection to art.
Absolutely. And I think that's a big piece of what we try to do in the community. To use the chalk walk as an example, we had in front of City Hall, we had large blocks of these beautiful chalk paintings that were done by local artists. Some were teens and some were adults, that were sponsored by local families or local businesses. But over at El Pond, we had smaller squares that anybody could come, and we would work with them and give them like the really good chalk to make their
I remember
own.
your really good chalk.
It's really good chalk.
It really is.
It's really good chalk. So to always have that opportunity and to honor fine artists and to honor artists for the work that they do and the training that they have and the skills that they have, and to honor everybody's creativity and give space for everybody to be able to create. That's really the balance that we try to hold.
So maybe a last question for you, and maybe a challenging one as someone who is artistically inclined. We've obviously got many things here in Melrose for, accessing creativity and being inspired. Where would you recommend people go outside of Melrose if they want to have an art, exposure to arts, a favorite museum, a favorite, cultural exhibit or location, or you can name a couple?
Okay. I love the Institute for Contemporary Art, the ICA. I love it because, for several reasons. One, it was my favorite museum to take my kids when they were little, because being a family that was on a budget, kids under 18 are free. I don't know that everybody knows that, but it's true. And it's a very achievable museum for a family. It's not that big.
Right.
And their installations are always changing. And it's a great place to have conversations about art and the meaning of art and what art pulls out of you. My other go-to favorite is the De Cordova, because my background is in sculpture and I love creating three-dimensional pieces and kind of carving space in that way. So the De Cordova is a huge
In Lincoln,
draw.
right?
It's in Lincoln. Is it in Lincoln? It's in Lincoln.
I think so, because that was a COVID-friendly place to take my kids over the last couple summers when it was a warmer day, just to run around outside, and then all of a sudden they would just stop because there was an amazing, sculpture right there in front of you.
Absolutely. And they have some trees, some weeping European beech trees that are just as phenomenal as any of the sculptures. It's a wonderful place. My daughter asked for her Sweet 16 there. We took a car full of kids there for her birthday. It was just so fun.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, Kris, it was so nice to get to talk with you today to learn more about the incredible work that you're doing at Value Art Community Studio. I feel inspired to come by for some of the events you've mentioned, maybe even a drop-in at some point to try my hand at something.
You can do it. You can absolutely do it.
Okay.
We'll take very good care of you.
All right. Well, hopefully other people who are listening are also inspired to learn more on your website or stop by at your lovely location right downtown in Main Street. So thank you for joining me for Conversations with Kate, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you again for having me, and my apologies for my froggy voice.
It's your podcast voice. You know, it works. I think it'll sound great.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye.